Welcome back to MOMnation Unscripted. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Hello, everyone. This is Ryan Gilliam, Senior Mortgage Banker with Waterstone Mortgage. If you're looking to buy a new home or even refinance a current one, I'm able to help you find the best program and interest rate that fits your specific needs. You could call me anytime directly at phone number 480-635-3035 if you have any mortgage questions or if you're ready to get pre-approved for a new home purchase. Thank you.
Hey guys, we are back for episode 12. I'm so excited. How are you, Katie? It's May.
I'm doing okay, but I have to say this, and you tell me if you can relate. So this is the craziest thing to me. I don't get like the science-y stuff behind why do some weeks and months and days feel so much longer than other weeks and months and days? Because January, we all remember January. It was a great year in our life.
Yeah, but I don't feel like every January is that way. Just this year.
This year. And we weren't even dealing with, well, unbeknownst to us, we were not dealing with COVID or anything like that, right?
Not that we knew of.
Not that we knew of. February felt awfully long as well. March, because of the whole stay-at-home.
It was a decade. It wasn't just a year. It was a decade.
It was a decade. I totally agree. And now April, where did April go?
Well, in April, yeah, I saw this meme and I was like, it was like March was a year and then April was a long weekend. And it like totally just felt like that. And here, I mean, we're only 5 days into March, but it's gone so fast these past 5 days. So
May, you mean? See,
yes.
You're still in March because that's how fast April went.
It was so long. March still isn't over.
So we need to find somebody that can explain this because I need to know. It's driving me nuts.
Okay, so there's like a woo-woo explanation, like a ethereal, out of this world kind of an explanation, and that is that time isn't real, and that time is, that we're just kind of like in a matrix kind of a thing, and so certain time periods can feel longer, even though it technically isn't, according to our constructs. And so it's like a quantum physics thing. I'm sure I can find somebody that can talk to us about quantum physics and that sort of thing if we want to do an episode on weird stuff like that.
I think I'd love it because I need to know.
I've got a girl, so yeah.
So anyway, so I've just been kind of like, whoa, where did April go? All week, and then today's Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah. Did you do anything for May the 4th?
No. So that crept up on me, and I saw some cute memes out there, like the 4th be with you memes, and I was like, oh yeah, that's today.
That's a thing. Yes. Yeah. So we started to watch the what's the last episode? Something about Rise of the Skywalker. I think that's it, right? And so we started to watch that, and I definitely slept through it. I just was like, I hate Kylo Ren. And then, I was asleep and then I woke up. So,
but like,
there you have it.
Okay, so maybe this is just me, but do you not sleep through every movie? Because like I do.
Even
at the theater.
I stay awake at the theater. I do stay awake at the theater. But generally speaking, I fall asleep really easy to the TV. I was the 6th child. And so my house was very noisy. And so like the sound of just noise, constant noise is so relaxing to me. And I just pass out to that. I actually sleep best on a couch. And so, everybody always says like, I'm going to make my husband sleep on the couch. I'm like, no, I'm going to tell my husband I'm sleeping on the couch. And that's
I can get some sleep.
That's the agreement we have there. Yes. So yeah. So definitely, I mean, it's very rare for me to stay awake for a movie. I watch sitcoms because they're short, or I watch serial killer shows because they're intense enough that I stay awake. That's about it. So yeah.
It's interesting. I started watching a new, just kind of tell you a little bit about my week. So we did some stuff over the weekend. We had my mom came over. We've been seeing my mom kind of here and there.
Good.
And so she came over, we had a little pool party. Had a couple of friends, very small gathering, well under 10. On Saturday night, we sat outside and just it was just nice to be with others and to have like a normal conversation kind of thing. So that was my weekend. It was great. Went by super fast. It's been very busy with work. So I've been kind of burning the midnight oil. And so speaking of that, so I found a new TV series.
Oh, really?
Probably not super new, but it's new to me, and it's in its first season, and I really liked it. It's called Hollywood. Have you heard of it?
I have. I've seen something about it.
Yeah,
Tell me, are you loving it? What's it about?
Totally loving it. So I'm messing with my bangs still. I promise next week I will not be messing with my bangs because Candace.
You gonna go see Candace?
Oh my God. I can't wait. Like I'm dying. Sunday is my appointment, Mother's Day, perfectly placed. And I'm like, dude, you gotta handle this. But anyways, so the movie is great. I don't know the exact year that it's set in, but it's after the war. So it must be like, I don't know, late 40s, 50s, something like that. And it's got all the old cars. So it's that historic feel that I love. And it's based on Hollywood back in those days. And, there's a handful of actors that are trying to break into the scene, and it's kind of like their story and how they're breaking into the scene. And it's very eye-opening. I don't know how true it is, the stories that they depict, but I've heard some stuff lately that would lead me to believe that it's true. There's just kind of a lot of, it just shows the predatory side.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And kind of what these actors thought they needed to do to get a role and to get a good part. And it's actually kind of sad. I'm certain it happened. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but I mean, I'm certain there's some truth in that.
Yeah.
And so that part's kind of sad, but I love all the old school clothing and the cars and just how they did things back then. And so I watched, I don't know, 6 episodes or something like that last night.
I'm not going to judge you. I like to binge too. So, which is interesting because as you're talking about Hollywood, instantly my brain is going to Marilyn Monroe, who I know she definitely had a whole lot of that predatory stuff going on with her becoming famous. And so Marilyn Monroe, it's really interesting because she actually can tie very well into what we're going to be talking about today, which is
why I'm glad you brought her up.
Yeah, right. So Marilyn Monroe, she actually talks about how she found that eyeliner and lipstick were as powerful for getting her attention as putting on like a ball gown. And so, yeah. And so she ended up, that was very much her look because it worked so well. It got her the attention that she wanted to be able to achieve the things that she wanted to achieve. And so there's lots there. She actually had, and I think I mentioned this on a previous episode, but she had crippling social anxiety. And she would be very late for when she was supposed to be performing because her anxiety was so intense that she had to work herself up to be able to go get out there and perform. And it's shocking because you watch her performances and they are so perfect. They're spot on. You would never guess that she was having a meltdown before she came out there and was performing. So
that's crazy. And I do remember you saying that, and I had never known that before about her. So, I mean, do you know more detail on that? Like what kinds of things?
So she actually had a really traumatic childhood. She didn't know who her father was, and her mother, she kind of actually would have been a great fit for MOMnation. But her mother, she had some mental health issues, some schizophrenia type issues going on. And so she lost custody of Marilyn, which her name wasn't Marilyn when she was a child.
Right. It was like something Jean or.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Starts with an N. Norma Jean. Norma Jean. Yep. So Norma Jean, she ended up going to the foster system. She was assaulted by her foster parents her whole time growing up. She had just this very, very traumatic experience, but she wanted to be famous. And so she was, she ended up dealing with a lot of the things that a lot of people who had traumatic childhoods deal with. And that's like, you grew up in this state of constant fear. You grew up in this state of constant anxiety. And so you can't trust the people around you, because if somebody's being nice to you, they're being nice to you for a reason.
For a reason.
If somebody is not being nice to you, then you're afraid for yourself. You've just been trained to constantly have your guard up. And I think that a lot of moms who deal with anxiety, who deal with these sorts of things, if every time I've asked them about their childhood, they're like, well, let me tell you, right? So typically speaking, as somebody who had that childhood, and as somebody who deals with that anxiety today, it's very, very common to have to work out these things as an adult that you dealt with as a child, and you don't even understand until you're in your 30s and your 40s or whatever, like how this all actually started to play together.
Yeah, and in some cases, having experience with that also, you don't even know.
Yeah.
Your therapist is like, well, gee, have you thought about maybe talking about back then? And you're like, well, what do you mean? Why? I'm an adult now. I've lived it, and that's the past.
Right.
Oh, no.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing is that, like, with a therapist, I currently am in therapy. I'm doing EMDR which is a particular therapy that uses triggering your brain as if you're having rapid eye movement, like you're sleeping, to help you to process trauma. And so anyways, I've dealt with this for quite a while, and I'm in therapy for it. And the therapist, it's interesting because this is like my 5th or 6th therapist or something. And like, this is the first time that I've all of a sudden been like, oh, wait, like all of those things where I said, I wasn't using things as an excuse. I always felt like, oh, I'm using my childhood as an excuse. I'm using this traumatic experience as an excuse. And turns out I'm not. You actually have to process those things in order to not get trapped in that particular cycle over and over again.
Right.
So.
And this might be a little bit off topic, but I think it's important to note, not every therapist is going to be a good match for you either.
No.
And I think that's really important to know, especially if you're therapist shopping.
Yes. And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you might have one therapist that's great for one area and a different therapist that's great for another area. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, I can remember this one marriage counselor that Matt and I were seeing for a little while. And we both would come home and say, dang, I feel like we go in there and we're in a really good spot, and he like gets us fighting. Or, he kind of digs up stuff that we've already figured out and like lights that fire again. And we were kind of feeling like that. We ended up firing him and going a different direction. And Matt actually divulged to me one day, he said, I haven't told you this, but when I was speaking with him, because we would speak with him together and then we'd do one-on-ones with him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And he's like, during my one-on-one, he actually told me that, I should probably just get a girlfriend. Like,
what?
Like, me too. Like, it's like, yeah. Like, have the wife at home, but get a girlfriend. I'm like, okay, we're not doing that.
That's crazy.
So just a little info that the therapist that you chose, if you're feeling like it might not be the right therapist, that's probably the case.
Well, yeah. And like, you need to be really, really clear on what are your non-negotiables. So when I was like going through a faith transition, I had a therapist that was, she belonged to the faith that I was leaving. And so for me, that was like, okay, this is going to make it really, really hard to have an unbiased therapist. It's something you need, right? You need a therapist that like isn't going to attempt to make you see things their way, right?
Without an agenda, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. And so therapists can be really, really good. And one of the really important things when it comes to being aware of like therapy versus coaching, because I'm sure that everybody here has heard of life coaches, or you've heard of, there's tons and tons of different types of coaches, tons of different specialties of coaches. And I myself am a coach, but I personally specialize in brand, but there's lots of life coaches. And one of the most alarming things as somebody who's in the coaching industry is how often coaches will tell you that they will help you cure your depression. They'll help you cure your anxiety. They'll help you with your OCD. They'll help you with just a variety of things that they have no business helping you with.
Yeah.
Those are that's the ground for a therapist. And so coaches, I believe in as somebody to help you to get your head in the right space to move forward. But if you have a coach that's encouraging you or talking to you about things in the past, they have stepped beyond their scope. Their job is not ever, ever, ever to help you with your past, unless you're like, needing to tell us, it's somebody that helps you with telling the story about your past.
Right.
Then sure, that can come in that way. But somebody that's helping you to heal from your past, you need a therapist or a psychologist or somebody trained that way. Otherwise, it can actually do a lot more damage than good. Honestly, that's something that has happened to me. I kept hiring coaches to break cycles, to get past X, Y, or Z, to be able to create boundaries or whatever. And it caused a lot more problems than it helped. And I know a lot of coaches will not like hearing that, but it is my truth. So
interesting. Well,
there you have it.
There's a reason why there's professional designations for things out there. I always say it holds true in many, many businesses, mine included. There is a reason why there are actual trained licensed people doing things that actual trained licensed people should do.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And
so
go ahead.
Question back to Marilyn, because this is our topic, so we might as well continue. Do you know a lot about her? Like, do you know what kinds of things that she would do to help calm that anxiety and like figure out where she needed to be in order to perform? And then my assumption is that after performance, there's kind of breakdown again, and then the whole cycle begins. That's just my thought. I don't know if that's a thing, but
yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things that she did. And first off, I just want to kind of cover the unhealthy things that she did before we get into the healthy things, because we're going to be talking about lots of healthy things that you can do. But if you are seeing yourself in some of these patterns that are unhealthy, it's time to go call up Laura. Yep.
Dr. Laura Wood. She's not really a doctor, so I shouldn't say that, but I tease her and call her that.
Yes. Laura Wood.
Let me say that.
She is a therapist, right? Go talk with her. She actually does EMDR, like I was talking about that I've been doing and whatnot. And so there's there are really great resources for that. So if you find yourself playing out these unhealthy patterns, go start with talking to somebody like Laura about this. So and that is she was very addicted to a lot of things, and typically speaking, addiction is something that we do to cope with the fact that we can't handle the thoughts that we're dealing with. And so we turn to an addiction to distract our brain from what we don't want to think about. And so for her, drugs and alcohol were very, very strong coping mechanisms.
And it was a whole mess of drugs too, if I remember right, like prescriptions from a bunch of different doctors and stuff like that.
Well,
correct. Okay.
Depends on if we want to go down the conspiracy theory route or right. And so, but yes, absolutely. There were tons of drugs. There was a whole lot of drinking. They would say that like one of the reasons that she would be, hours late for her performances, for, filming, it was because she was drinking to cope, to get ready to get out and perform.
And she would just get all wasted and couldn't go, basically, right?
Yes, exactly. And then she had to get herself together enough to be able to go. And so if you do find yourself, playing out patterns where you're thinking like, this is actually more like an addiction than it is, just, because Katie, we'll have fun, we'll have drinks together, that sort of thing. It's very, very different than an addiction. And so,
right. So we
disclaimer.
have drinks together, right, to visit and to have, whatever, have a little bit of fun. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
But we don't do it every day and call each other up at 8:00 in the morning, half in the wrapper either.
And we don't show up hours late for, different things. We don't have a lot of the problems that show up around that. So
when is it an addiction? I mean, when it starts interfering with normal life, like what's that line?
Right.
For people who don't know, like what's that line? I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, like when I've talked to doctors and therapists, they say that when it's interfering with your life, when it's interfering with your relationships. And so I always have a hard time with that. And that's again, like a great time, go ask your doctor, go ask your therapist, go to ask somebody like that. If you're thinking like, okay, this might be, it's probably time to talk to somebody about it.
If you're worried about it, or thinking about it often, I agree with you. It's probably.
Yeah. And so just being aware of that is a big part of it. But the question is, how do you know when it's actually interfering with your life and when you're actually just stepping up and being who you are? So for example, I work with tons and tons of women who are working on businesses, and a lot of times their partners are very upset by this. Or they go on a retreat, or they go on a vacation, or they go and they do something that is to help their business, and they're being told like, oh, you're letting this business get in the way, right? And so you're addicted to this, or you're spending too much time on this, and so they start to doubt themselves when they're just like lacking a proper support system. Yeah. And so that's an important conversation to have with yourself, is like, am I actually doing this out of an addiction, or is this interfering with my life because the people around me need to adjust? That's a huge distinction for sure.
Right, because at the end of the day, we have to have our things. I mean, we have to have what makes us feel whole and what makes us feel valuable to the world. Mm-hmm. And as moms, sometimes that gets lost. I think often it gets lost. And you just kind of, either because you're being told that by parents or spouses, or because you're telling yourself that you've got to like be this thing and can't have your own passions and stuff like that. And you and I both know that that's the first thing to destructive feelings and destructive behavior, is not allowing your passion to thrive. So I could totally see how people would question themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And so it's just an important thing is to like be super real with yourself about like, am I surrounded by people who are unsupportive? Am I surrounded by people who are jerks? Yeah. For lack of a better word, like, am I surrounded by people who are jerks? And if you are, you can work on having course corrections in that relationship. But again, like great topic to talk about with your therapist to figure out like, am I the problem? Are the people around me the problem? Is it a combination? I'm sure it's a combination. But
it's probably a little of both.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. We teach people how to treat us. So anyway.
So true. Yeah. So Marilyn was drinking a lot and drugging a whole bunch.
She was. But she also had a lot of things that she did that would make it so that she could be Marilyn. And so one of the things that people don't know about her, typically speaking, is that she actually had an incredibly high IQ. It was like 165. And so she was actually a genius, certifiably a genius. And she was treated like the dumb blonde. And so towards the end of her life, she was working on correcting that and not being the dumb blonde that Hollywood had made her into. as far as the persona goes. But her persona was the thing that made her as successful as she was at the same time. And so, like I mentioned, her eyeliner, her lipstick, the clothing that she wore, being a blonde, she was not a natural blonde. Shocker, she was not a platinum blonde naturally. She ended up adopting all of these different things. And you've never seen a picture of Marilyn where she didn't, except towards the end of her life, but where she didn't have her like classic Marilyn Monroe smile or her sexy like hand on her face. Those specific physical things that she did, they were intentional to make her the persona that made her as successful as she was. And so that's huge.
So being a brand strategist, you must be like, girlfriend, you had it going on oodles of years ago. She knew what she was doing.
She was an icon, right? She was, we weren't talking about personal brands back then, but she was the embodiment of a personal brand. Absolutely. And so she knew it, and she knew how to work it, and she knew how to leverage that to get more. So she was able to like get huge raises because of leveraging her personal brand the way that she did. So yeah, she was just genius, literally a genius. And so one of the things that she did that is interesting, you can see when you watch her in any performance, you can see exactly how she carries herself. So she always has incredible posture. She also like carries and like moves her hands in very specific ways, right? It's very sexy. It's very specific, but it also gets her into the headspace of the persona that she was showing up as, which is Marilyn Monroe. Because remember, she's Norma Jean.
Right.
Yes. And so this is something that actually a ton of famous people do. Kobe Bryant, he had the Black Mamba persona that he showed up with on the court. What's her name? Beyonce. She showed up as Sasha Fierce when she was transitioning from being the good Christian girl performing on the stage to being sexy Beyonce. She embodied Sasha Fierce. And so
I like that name.
Yeah. And so you can actually go and look at tons of different rock stars, tons of different athletes, and they do embody a particular persona in order to show up the way that they want to in life and in on their court. So there's actually a book called, I think I have it right here. It's called The Alter Ego Effect. Oh, I actually have multiple copies around me. Look at that. But The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman, he actually teaches, it's called The Power of Secret Identities and How to Transform Your Life, or to transform your life. And so Todd Herman, he actually works with billionaires, and he's worked with gold medal Olympic athletes, and that caliber of human. And what he does is he actually helps people to take on these personas so that they can show up on what he calls their field of play the way that they need to in order to accomplish what they want to.
So give me an example for those of us, me, that is a little slow here. So
you're good.
Basically, this is the person I want to be. Here's the person I am. During certain circumstances, the person I want to be, like, what are the things that I do to become the person I want to be? That's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it can also be physically, like, how do you get yourself in that headspace? So Marilyn put on her eyeliner and she put on her lipstick, and that got her into her character. And so if you're able to get yourself into this character, Norma Jean became Marilyn Monroe when she put on that face.
Right.
And so, like in that book in particular, he helps you with coming up with like the name, or he talks about, this is really interesting. I'm going to ask you a question. Who is who's the alter ego, Superman or Clark Kent?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I'm going to go with Clark.
Exactly, right? So Clark Kent is actually the persona that Superman took on to dumb himself down.
Mm-hmm.
To make himself seem average. And like so many of us actually do this on a daily basis. to be able to fit in with the people around us, or to
We
fit
Clark
in.
Kent ourselves.
We Clark Kent ourselves.
You're
Yeah.
right. And in some, the light bulb, can you see it? And in some
Yep.
circumstances, we probably don't even need to Clark Kent ourselves. We're just making assumptions.
Yep. Exactly. And so if you think about like what he did to transform himself, whenever I'm teaching people about anything like this, about adopting a character, I'm very, very sure to emphasize that it's not about pretending that you're someone that you're not. It's about admitting to yourself that you're exactly who you tell yourself that you want to be. And if you can let yourself be exactly who you want to be, and realize that you're not faking it, that you actually are that person, then suddenly your whole life can transform. And you can suddenly start making more money. You can start to run marathons. If that's the thing that you're into, you can, become that great crafter. You can become an artist, like whatever it is that you've told yourself, I wish I could, you finally can. And so a lot of times it just comes down to like physically letting yourself be that version of yourself.
Well, the woo-woo in me
Mm-hmm.
really agrees with this, because if you want to make changes, you have to start doing things differently, thinking differently, right? Because you just keep doing the same thing over and over. What's that called? Definition of insanity, and expecting the same result. So if you want to expect a different result, you got to do different things, right? And then the law of attraction says that the more that you're thinking like that person you want to be thinks, the more that you're doing the things that the person that you want to be does, the more you are that person. The more things will be likened to itself. It will attract like to itself, right?
Yeah. Well, and we just go back to like Norma Jean. What did she do? She figured out who Marilyn Monroe was. She embodied her, and she's one of the greatest icons of all time.
Oh, hands down. I mean, who doesn't know who that is?
Yeah, exactly.
Even my little 6-year-old kid, and she died when? Like a gazillion years ago.
Yeah.
Right? And my little 6-year-old kid knows who that is.
Yeah, exactly. So Tony Robbins, he's one of the most world famous life coaches. A lot of people hate him. A lot of people love him. It's one or the other. One of the things that he talks about is that when you find yourself dealing with anxiety, when you feel yourself feeling depressed, when you feel yourself feeling any way that you don't want to be feeling, the very first thing that you need to do is change your state, physically change your state. And so you need to put yourself in that Superman pose. You need to stand up. If you need to be feeling stronger and bolder and bigger, then make yourself physically bigger and stronger and bolder and bigger, or whatever those words were that I said, right?
And bolder.
And bolder, right? And so this is actually something that Katie and I talked about last year at the Business Revolution, which was an event that I hosted that Katie spoke at.
A year ago.
It was a year ago this month.
So it was before January.
So it was really like 12 years ago, pretty much, right? It was a very, very long time ago. And so one of the things that we talked about was that if you're starting to feel yourself getting nervous, and this applies whether you're going on a stage or whether you need to say something to someone that makes you uncomfortable, or whether this comes down to you are just in the quarantine funk and you need to just snap out of it for a minute. I am not saying that this is a solution to your anxiety and depression long term. I'm saying that this is something that can help you snap out of it for a period of time. Because if you have like trauma and baggage and issues that you need to deal with, you got to deal with those. Otherwise this stuff just covers it up and it makes it worse. Okay. But one of the things that you can do is just physically change your state. And so, yeah, like I said, you can do your Superman pose. You can make yourself a big starfish. Something that I do is I make my face super smiley and I hold that smile until like I just can't stop, like, and my cheeks hurt. and I feel ridiculous the whole time. But then it actually changes the chemicals in your body. And if you can change the chemicals in your body, suddenly you're able to show up the way that you want to show up. You're able to show up more confident. And so you ask yourself, okay, so how do I want to show up? I want to show up confident. Okay, what does confident actually mean? Because confidence is actually just knowing what you know. It's not charisma. It's not being entertaining. It's being able to walk into space. And if somebody says to you, the sky is green, you say, it's blue, because you know that the sky is blue, right? But if you get down to what does confidence actually look like? Well, confidence looks like I walk in a room and I own it. It looks like I walk in a room and I have great posture. I wear heels. I have awesome makeup. I am super friendly. All of a sudden, those are things that you can do, right? I can walk into a room and I can wear heels. I can walk into my bathroom and put my makeup on so that I embody what confidence looks like. I can suddenly just go, what's the word that I'm looking for? What were the other examples I used? I can go be friendly. Whether I am the most awkward person in the world, and if I ask you questions that are going to create awkward conversation or not, I can be friendly, right? I can get words out of my mouth even if I'm stammering. And the more that I do that, the more that I'm actually showing my body and I'm showing my mind, okay, this is my brain knows, okay, this is what confidence looks like. So if I look like this, I must be confident. I'm just getting my brain and my actions on the same page. Right. And so I know that you probably have your own things that you did as a rock star, as you're going on stage to perform. What were the things that you did to get yourself in performance mode, Katie?
So basically a lot of what you said, just it kind of looks a little bit different when, you're performing on stage at a rock show. Mm-hmm. So the outfit was definitely a big thing for me. So there were certain pair of shoes that I wore on stage that I didn't wear anywhere else.
He totally talks about that in the alter ego effect, that you should have something that you only wear for that. Mm-hmm.
For that thing. Yeah. And so as soon as it's almost like I should have brought them in here to show you. I still have these dang things and it's been a long time, but they're like knee high, pleather black boots. And the heels like this, I couldn't walk in them now probably if I tried, but this is like before baby and, yes, all of that stuff. But as soon as I was done performing, my process would be I would come down into the crowd and I would, connect with people. There'd be a bunch of people at the stage. I talk with everybody. Hello, thank you for coming, that kind of stuff, like do the PR stuff, go over to the band table, thank everybody. I was always very appreciative of my band members. But I would take those boots off.
Yes.
So I wasn't tearing down my equipment in them. I wasn't doing anything else in them. It was simply for when so I had a little alter ego name back then. Okay. I used it more in the beginning of my career because it was for a specific band that I was in, a little punk band. And so I was Roxy Lee. And so I was not Roxy Lee when the boots were off.
Yes.
So I can totally understand what you're talking about because the boots were my big thing. The outfit, of course, I dressed with I still do, a lot of black mm-hmm. and, fishnet stuff and, that rock and roll kind of vibe. And then, and I didn't dress that intensely anywhere else. It was only for stage. So I had like my stage clothes. So that was really the dress that you're talking about, right? The physical thing. I would also arrive early. Mm-hmm. Anytime I'm going to perform, you'll see me there way earlier than I need to be because that allows my energy to get a feel for the place. It allows me to get my bearings. I can start visualizing the crowd, start visualizing my performance. If I can't see the space or sit and spend quiet time alone in the space, and that doesn't mean there weren't other bands up or whatever, things going on. I was just in my head, you know what I mean? If I can't sit and almost meditate on that space, I'm not going to feel comfortable in the space. And that was huge for me. So that was always my routine. And then the last bit is I was incredibly prepared. I knew my lyrics, and my band members, my old ones, if they're watching this, they'll be like, no, you didn't. Yeah, I did. I knew my lyrics. And the reason why, you guys, that I would take notes, and my iPad eventually, once, technology started kicking in, is so that way I was so confident that I knew my lyrics, that even if they happen to disappear out of my head, I could look down and I could see them. And so that was like my safety net. And the crowd couldn't, it was like in front of the monitors and stuff. Like you couldn't see my little note section. My water was down there and stuff, But those are the three things that I did that really helped. I had massive stage fright. I think we've talked about this before, and anxiety and all of that for a while. And then it went away. And there's a reason for that. And there's a couple of details that I'm missing out. It didn't just miraculously disappear. But repeating that same process over and over with the boots and the getting there early and the being totally prepared with, all my music, I knew it. Plus I had it in case I forgot. That's really what did it. And that's what made me feel like, yeah, I can do this, every weekend, 2 nights a week, sometimes, Friday, Saturday. That's really what did it. And when all that went away, I was boring Katie again.
Right? Isn't that so fascinating? And, there were some interesting things that I was just thinking of as you were talking, that I also do when I'm getting ready to get on stage. Like I will walk with like very big confident steps. I'll just walk around back and forth, and, holding those poses like I talked about. But the walking around or something that we had at the event last year was a little trampoline for people to jump on. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And I'll never forget you said, I just got off the trampoline, and this is Beth. Okay. This is Brandmaster Beth. When she speaks in front of people, it's like, she's just, she does this every day. She probably does, but she's like just so comfortable. And all of a sudden she's telling us that, hey, I have to psych myself up to get out here.
Yeah.
Which
if I don't, like I am timid, I am quiet, I am uncomfortable. Like it has to be an intentional physical state that I put myself in. But as we're talking about having, your boots that you wore. So he also talks about this in the book that I was mentioning, where he calls it a totem, that you need to have something that you can physically put on and physically take off to get into the persona that you want to be in. And this can actually be like, this persona doesn't have to just be like a stage performance version of yourself. This can be like, if you struggle to get into mom mode, you can have something that you put on that's like, I am the best mom in the world right now.
Yeah.
And so it goes both ways. But Martin Luther King Jr., don't know if you know this, but he didn't need glasses. He wore glasses because he felt they made him distinguished.
Oh, cute.
Right. And so he wore them in order to get himself into a certain headspace. And so like the most fascinating thing is like seeing how many people are world-changing, world-rocking humans who they use this philosophy of changing your state in order to show up the way that you want to. And like, I just want you guys to know that as moms who you might feel awkward going to an event that MOMnation puts on, you can do this too. You can absolutely adopt the most interesting woman in the world persona, or the most friendly person in the world. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's possible to snap yourself into that headspace and make it so that you become the version of yourself that you feel like you want to be in that space.
I love that. And I think it's so applicable to so many things. Yeah, definitely to like going out and socializing and things like that. 100% applicable to that. But what about like when you feel like weird around your in-laws and stuff like that? You know what I mean? And you're like, oh gosh, we're going to another holiday with the in-laws. Like you can also use this tactic for that. Like maybe you are super confident daughter-in-law and, you know, super great mom and, you know, maybe you have an overbearing mother-in-law that tries to tell you how to raise your kid and live your life and stuff. You can overcome that, I feel like, even by using this process.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do that depending on kind of what you want to do with it. Do you want to be the person that finally speaks up for herself? Do you want to be the fun, bubbly, entertaining person that they want you to be, that you know that you are when you aren't feeling the pressure to show up in a specific way? Do you just have to get really, really clear on like who is it that I want to be showing up as here? Which version of myself? Because we all have 1,000 versions of ourselves, whether we want to admit that or not. We show up as a different version of ourselves for different people. And owning and knowing that you're capable of putting on the persona that you need to put on for the situation you're in. Like I think of Cammie that we had on a few weeks ago, who she talked about having to advocate for her kids and having to speak up. And that's one of those scenarios where you need a different version of yourself to show up than the sweet, submissive patient.
Well, yeah. And this is really heavy stuff she's dealing with, and it's her child. So you got, like, I try and put myself in her shoes when she's, you know, talking with doctors and things like that. And she's got to be strong. And it's like, this is a really emotional thing. You know what I mean? And how do you not totally break down? So I completely agree with you. This process and this tactic is just so applicable for so many things. With your boss, you know, maybe you have to have a hard conversation with your boss. Okay, let's be that person that you want to be. And I love the token thing. I didn't even know that's what I was doing with my boots, but
yeah. And so, you know, just when it comes to like having those hard conversations, you know, I think there's this quote that I wish I could think of what it is exactly, but there's a quote that essentially is saying, I'm going to speak up even if my voice shakes. And the reality is that like you might have anxiety about showing up, about saying something. You might actually physically be shaking from your anxiety about the thing, and you can say it anyway, and you can do it anyway. Your anxiety shouldn't be something that stops you, but it should be something that like you stop and you pay attention to and ask like, okay, hey, anxiety, what you doing here? You're here for a reason. Are you here because I need to do this? And I know that I need to do this, and I'm afraid of doing this because why? Because you're afraid of the outcome. You're afraid that people won't like you anymore if you say something. And if people don't like you anymore, then what does that mean? Does that mean that like you suck and that you're unlovable, right? No, that's not what it means. It just means that you probably need to get more comfortable saying things, more comfortable speaking up for yourself, more comfortable asking for support, asking for help. It's a sign that you need to take note, not a sign that you need to run away.
yeah, I totally agree. I love it all, Beth. And thank you for those tips. I will never forget your tips on when we were talking about the trampoline right before you were, and I was saying to myself, really? Like you need to do that? Really? So, I mean, it's so true. Even the things that we know that we're good at and that we love to do, sometimes we still need to put on a bit of a different face in order to get there. And that's totally okay.
Yeah. And I mean, like there's even been an episode here where, you know, Katie and I, we were on right before it, and I started crying, and we were like, okay, put on the performance face. You've got this. And I did. It was fine.
Killed
the rest
it
of the time, right? Nobody knew I had been crying. And that's what's possible when you do this. And so anyway, just as a mama that deals with anxiety, that, I've been very open with you guys about OCD and depression and anxiety and all the things. I just want you guys to know that you're not alone in dealing with these things, and you're wanted anyway. And in
100%.
fact, you're probably wanted because of it, actually, if we're being honest.
Yeah, very much. And what helps me, and I don't know if this is a thing or not, but I heard several years ago that what people think of you is none of your business.
I love that.
And I kind of roll with it. I'm just like, yeah, I love me. I think I'm great. And that's not like in a cocky sense, but I think I'm great. And if Beth doesn't think I'm great, well, I'm sorry for Beth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Move on.
Exactly. I agree. So, and I do think you're great, for the record. I'm just going to say that. Well, Katie, we didn't tell the people what we need them to do.
Here's what we want, people. Okay. No, really. We're just asking, we're saying please and all of that stuff. So MOMnation has a vision, and MOMnation really wants to put into play. I don't know what the right word is, but we really want to move forward with our vision, and we are working on that every day. It's baby steps. It's a giant vision, but we want a resource out there that helps single moms transition from not being single moms into being single moms. And there's a whole bunch of stuff wrapped up in that. And the way that we're going to get there is by getting some help from our audience. And the way that you can help us is, if you love this podcast, please go to whatever platform that you listen to it on and like, share, and review. Or what do you usually say? Rate,
review, subscribe, and download these episodes.
She's got it down to a science. And the reason why
I've just listened to it said on other podcasts a million times, so it's drilled in there real good.
I got this. And the reason why we need you to subscribe is obviously so that way you can get our latest and greatest versions, or rather our episodes, in your inbox or your phone or your notifications, however you receive that, but also to download the episodes, because I know for sure iTunes doesn't really give us too much credit in terms of pushing our podcast out to potentially other, audience members and groups and stuff like that, unless we get downloads. So please help us out. Subscribe, download, review, rate.
Please, guys. It makes a huge difference. And, we're both very, very connected to this vision and mission for MOMnation. And that's why we show up every week ready to bring more stories, more lessons, more value, and everything to you guys. So we're going to keep doing this as long as it takes to be able to make the impact that we want to. And we can make that impact even faster with your help. So anyway.
I totally agree. It's really close to home for me. And I know for you too, especially with all of the things that, we really want to include in this resource for these moms transitioning. And gosh, I can't believe this, but I'm going to be 41 years old in June, Beth. 41. Mm-hmm. I know. Lived a lot of life. And back 41 years ago, I was raised by a single mom. Mm-hmm. And she did an amazing job. I love her to death and will never fault her for any of that. She did everything she could with what she was dealing with, with what she had at the time. But I just think, man, if she had MOMnation, like if she had the hand up, if she had to be able to tap into all of the resources that we're pulling together, it may have made a huge difference in her experience. I mean, again, not wanting to give up any of it for the world. I think that we all experience, what we need to for different reasons. And I appreciate that time in my life, but it sure could have made a difference and made things a bit easier.
Absolutely. And I also had a mom that she got divorced, and she got remarried very, very quickly. And I think that, she's, I don't know that I would use the word lucky to describe getting remarried very quickly, but it was one of those scenarios where what would a single mom of 6 kids do if she
Right.
didn't get remarried quickly. And so, there's so much to think about with the different scenarios for what causes a mom to have that transition into being a single mom. And moms just need a hand. They just need a hand up. That's all.
It's true. It's true. All right, guys. Well, it was nice to see you today, my dear.
Yes, it's so good to see you too.
All right,
And
everybody.
We'll see you guys next time. Bye.